All right. Welcome to Reflect, Recalibrate. Whoop, whoop. We are your lovely lady artivist hosts, the lovely Jana E. Dandridge, and myself, Danny Snyder. This is the final part of our Knell of Poetry collection. This is when we invite some of our RFC comrades to join our discussion. And today we are going to further ponder on using language as a tool for liberation. And today, some of our comrades are the Tobi Orisarayi, the Katherine Henderson, and the Karlee Raye. Woo! I'm so excited to have these people on. Tobi was born and raised in Los Angeles, former junior Olympian and couture designer, now lives in New York, where he is a guest commentator on TMZ. He's a 2024 Tin House Fellow, 2023 PEN America Emerging Writing Finalist, and his fiction has been recognized by a Public Space and the New Yorker. Katherine is very close to me, right down the street in Bedford, Virginia, and she is a painter, formerly educated at Brevard College in Western North Carolina. Katherine studies sculpture and art history, and she is currently pursuing an MFA in painting from Savannah College of Art and Design. Her most recent body of work is predominantly oil painting with experimental acrylic and resin projects on the side, and currently her work is transitioning from bright, expressive landscapes to dramatic, figurative, and narrative paintings. And then Karlee Raye, who's also a collaborator I've worked with, is a singer-songwriter based in Central Virginia, known for her powerful voice and her heartfelt lyrics. She recently released her album World Won't Stop, and her performances mix country, soft rock, pop, and more, which is why I love her, because I love all the styles. So we have some really cool people on today. This is going to be a very interesting mix of perspectives as we get into using language as a tool for liberation. And as we get back into standard American English, the book that we looked at in our last episode and that we interviewed the author, poet Elisabeth Houston. But before we get into all that, y'all know the drill. We're going to turn it over to Janet, who's going to take us on a little news bite. What's our news bite for today?
Oh, today from Mediapart, a digital, participatory, and independent newspaper. The French publishing world was in uproar this week following a purge at one of the country's most prestigious houses, Grasset, by far-right multi-billionaire Vincent Bolloré, whose publishing group Hachette Livre owns the imprint. The controversy follows the enforced departure of Grasset's widely respected chairman and managing director, Olivier Nora, 65, after 26 years in the job, to be replaced by a Hachette executive. Bolloré's purge has been interpreted by many observers as a move by the far-right mogul to reinforce the reach of his political agenda ahead of France's presidential elections due in the spring of next year. Sharing that interpretation, 115 of Grasset's authors, many of them household names with international success, announced in a scathing open letter published late Wednesday that following the axing of Nora, they were departing the venerable publishing house, based since 1910 on the Rue des Saints-Pères in the Paris Left Bank district. Quote, "We refuse to be the hostages of an ideological war aiming to impose authoritarianism everywhere in culture and the media," wrote the authors of diverse cultural and political backgrounds, denouncing, quote, "an unacceptable violation of editorial independence and freedom of creation," and declaring that they refuse that our ideas, our work, could be owned by Bolloré. The authors of Wednesday's open letter declared, quote, "Once again, Vincent Bolloré says, I'm at home and I do what I want, in contempt of those who publish, of those who accompany, edit, correct, create, distribute our books, and in contempt of those who read us. Grasset," they wrote, "was our home, particularly because authors who weren't in agreement about very much peacefully rubbed shoulders there. Olivier Nora was its rampart and cement through his moral elegance, his availability, and his commitment." So, authors fighting back against authoritarianism. Danny, what say you? And also, the floor is open to
Yeah.
Katherine, Tobi, Karlee, if y'all have any comments on that.
I mean, the only real comment I have is that I know it is not, I say I know, I don't really know, but it's not easy to just leave a publishing company the same way, like, I'm sure Karlee Raye can talk on this too, of like leaving a, a label. It's not easy. So I don't really know what that process is going to look like. I'm very curious what the follow-up to this is going to be.
I think it's interesting though that as difficult as it can be to like, you know, dissociate from something that you've been part of for so long, like a publishing company or like a label, like you were saying, I think the interesting part is that the artists are still fighting back, using their art to fight back. And I think that is just a beautiful thing. Like, if you have something to say it. If you're outgrowing a system or a company and it's no longer serving the things that you feel like your art is meant to be saying. I mean, I understand. I know how hard it is. It's hard, which is like why for a long time I haven't signed myself with a label or an agency or anything like that because I always had the mindset of like do it yourself as long as you can, which maybe sounds awful, but like as writers, as artists of any kind, that being involved with companies like that can be very difficult to get out of. So I'm interested to see the fallout of that. But
And
Catherine, Toby. Oh, sorry.
Danny, you were talking about the contracts. And so I'm
Yeah.
curious, Tobi, do you know how difficult it is to get out of a
Yeah, do you?
contract? Or what happens once you're like, no, I'm not doing this anymore as an author?
I mean, I think when you were recapitulating on what's happening in France, I think as much as the world is in this doomsday about literature, nobody reads anymore, the arts are dying. I think this situation, as grim as it is a powerful indicator that governmental forces understand the power of language. They
Mm.
understand language as liberation that despite how many few people read, there's clearly something so powerful about what we're doing that they are so interested in our sector of the editorial world, the publishing industry, which is minute, is tiny, but clearly it's mighty. And so I think what's happening is really unfortunate, but we've seen authoritarian figures try to silence voices. And the great thing about writers is that we're resilient. And despite this being one publishing house falling victim to the hands of capitalism, I also think we will survive. And I think I love that the theme of this is language is liberation because this is a direct, like, even the people who are ops are recognizing that language is liberation. And I think that's powerful. But to your point about getting out of a contract, it's really important to find an indie imprint publisher who sees the vision of your work. Part of the marvel of standard American English and why I hold it up so highly is that when I read it, I think like, who allowed this to happen?
you're
How,
right.
like how did Elisabeth get this through this grinding machine of publishing that is just so hard to even get your foot in the door? And that's why Elisabeth's bio is awesome too, because it kind of addresses that machine or machinery. But I always think it's important for writers to understand that they have power when they're bringing their stories to publishers, when they're bringing their stories to agents. At the end of the day, these people work for you. Your name is going to be the name on that book. You're the only person that has to stand behind those words. So everyone else's opinions, interjections, have an internal filter and be able to understand that, like, even if someone says they're on your side, if they're not following your vision, they're not really on your side. And so I think those are really important artistic conversations to have within ourselves. But yeah.
I agree 100%. I agree
Thank you.
100% with everything you said.
Thank you for that, Tobi. And Katie.
So it's interesting, I think, anytime that the government, especially like an authoritarian type government, tries to get involved in the media. I feel like, once they have control of the media, they have control of so much. But I admire the way that the French tend to handle these things. So, a massive walkout, that's cool. I've seen them take, I mean, on TV, obviously I haven't been there, but take large pieces of machinery and, like dump waste in like the halls of some government. And then there's, the guillotine. Like they know how to make a point. So I'll give them that.
Dude, they can get it across pretty.
They surely can.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with what Toby said too, as far as like they're like it being so like such a small aspect of things, but like it's still being so mighty. Like clearly they're afraid of something. You know what I mean? Clearly language does hold power. And I think the cool thing about that is too is like I come from a very indigenous background. My grandma was full-blood Monacan Indian. And it's like growing up for her, like they didn't have media. They didn't even have access to a lot of like the local papers and happenings. So everything that was passed down was old writings or oracle type things. And I think that that's where the power lies is the communication that we like. This is where the power lies, this right here, having these conversations with other artists. I don't know. I think it's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Well, let's get into using language as a tool for liberation. Let's get into it. Janet, can I start our first question?
Please.
All right. So to jump into our discussion today, we always like to ask this question about, in the Knell of Poetry Collection and this whole collection that we're concluding today of what surprised you. But let's focus specifically on the book Standard American English. As you were going through the book, what was something that surprised you? Maybe something that made you think, go, aha, uh, maybe something you disagreed with that, really, stuck with you afterwards. And I would like to start today with Tobi. We'll go around the circle. We'll start with Tobi. Actually, how long ago was it when you read this book? And how many times have you read it? Like, maybe you should clarify that first before you,
I came across Standard American English 2 years ago. I've read it multiple times. I feel like I come to Standard American English, and I guess I'll start this off by saying I consider Standard American English a Künstlerroman, which is a German word for an artist's coming of age novel. And there's a whole genre of and a lineage of novels that start with a young artist and follow them through their journey to when they're like in their adolescence or older. And Standard American English feels like that to me. I consider it a sort of artist Bible because if I'm feeling conflicted about something that happened in workshop, there's a poem for that. If I'm feeling conflicted about a relationship I have with someone who's much wealthier than me but disregards my existence in a certain way, there's a poem for that. If I'm feeling really dismayed about the publishing industry at large and I got a rejection letter from an agent, there's a poem for that. If I feel like I'm being pigeonholed to write a certain way in a certain genre, a certain archetype, there's a poem for that. And so even other people who come to me in life, they're on the like usually when they're on a breaking point, I can read them a poem from American Standard American English and I see the visible calm down when I'm reading the poem and they're seeing like, wow, like someone clearly is expressing this anguish that I've been feeling in my creative process and I haven't been able to name that feeling. And so I think that's what really inspires me about it is that I can read it to other people as a sort of therapy. I know that sounds weird, but it self-soothes me as well. I mean, at first glance, I love that Elisabeth's like name is redacted in a way, and I show a perfect, yeah. I show other poets that cover, and when I show poets that cover alone, they're like, yes. They don't even need to read the book. They're like, yes, I haven't even touched it, but exactly. And I think that's just incredible showmanship. It's incredible intentionality. I can see so many critics writing this book off as a sort of elusive, non-linear, maybe avant-garde, experimental piece, but I see so much I see so much tailoring in the book. And so for me, I guess it's the perfect balance of high and low for me. It is super erudite, but it's also very human and down to the ground. And in the dirt. And so I guess those are my general impressions.
I love that. And wow, some great vocabulary there to describe this book. You thought about how to describe this book, which I appreciate. I think I'm gonna go around my circle. I don't know what everyone else's circle looks like on their screen, but I'm gonna go to Katie next. Catherine, what surprised you when you looked at the book? And actually, can I ask, did you read the whole book out loud too? Because I'm curious what that experience was like as you were reading the book.
No, the first half I read silently, and
Mhm.
then when Carly came in, I read the second half out loud. Um, yeah, it was interesting to just like to figure out where to stop, and like because there were so many breaks, in the lines of the writing themselves, that it was interesting to kind of read it as like a rhythm, to figure
Mhm.
out like where really it goes. When it comes to what surprised me, I think the frankness of the language, how like there was no word that was shied away from, everything was explicit. And though I am like a rabid liberal feminist, I still was raised Southern with a capital S, so I clutched my pearls every once in a while, and I was like, oh my, a few times. But I got over it, and
I
I
love that.
appreciate it. But I just like I didn't really know what I was getting into, and then I knew really quickly what I gotten into. So that was probably the most surprising part for me, I think.
Mhm. Yeah, that first page when Janet sent me this book, and she didn't, all she told me was like, "Oh, I know Elizabeth. This will be a great person, and I'm going to send you a book." And I was like, "Oh, thanks." And I read that first poem, and I was like, "Okay, that's what we're getting into." I had no idea. I never
Right,
thought to ask
right. I
like,
did I didn't I did not want to
no,
preface or
yeah.
any of that. I was just like, take it.
Yeah. No, it was awesome. It was awesome. And I remember I had to pause for a second after that first poem. I actually most of the poetry I just kind of read through. Some I did go back and reread, but I just kind of for my first trip through the book, I didn't really go back and reread too much. But that first poem, I had to stop and reread it a few times and like, okay, I'm ready now to dive into this. I know what tone we're going into. And even then it changes all the time throughout the book, right? But anyhow, so Karlee, what was some of your impressions and surprises?
It was funny because Katie had started reading it before I did, and so when I came in initially and we started reading together and we were reading out loud to each other, she was reading out loud to me because I like to listen. But anyways, as she was reading that to me, I was like, because I remember when I came into the room, she goes, "You've got to read this. Like you've got to read this now." The book is like flipped open upside down, like she's holding pages for me to look at, and like
Hmm.
she's like, "Oh my gosh!" And she picks the book up and we start reading from like the middle, and from where I picked up, which kind of was dead in the middle of the book, it was like it it didn't shock me as much, I guess. Like it didn't give me that like take back feeling of like, oh, clutch my pearls or like, oh my gosh, until I went back and read the whole beginning and I was like, oh my God, like this is unhinged
Hmm.
and it's amazing. I love that there's no sugarcoating. Like Katie said, there's not things that are shied away from, or topics or feelings or emotions that are shied away from. And I think as like Southern women in particular, or just Southerners in general, like we have this tendency to like hide the ugly, to sweep it under the rug and bury it. And it's like I really admire that this artist, this author is like not doing that. She's laid it
Hmm.
all out on the table. I love it. And
Yeah,
I don't know, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the read a lot. So I don't think much really surprised me until I went back to the beginning and then I was like, oh, I was like grabbing the seats. I was like, oh my gosh,
yeah,
this is deep. And it was awesome. It was unlike any other poetry I'd read before too, and I love poetry. So
for sure. There's definitely I it's funny. I want to say like she's brave, but at the same time I'm like, well, maybe it shouldn't be considered so bold what she's doing. I'm
yeah,
kind of yeah, struggling with that of like, like you said,
that's
there's
kind of what I was gonna get into, is like it feels like there's things as artists we're not supposed to create or things we're not supposed to say. And why? Like we're the artists, we're the storytellers, we're the creators, we're the visionaries, we're the we're it. And it's like, why aren't we allowed to express these things? Like if you have a feeling, like some of the things that she wrote about in the book, I understand why people clutch their pearls.
Hmm.
But it's like, why aren't we writing about these things? Why aren't we talking about these
Hmm.
things?
Yeah, I don't know if I should say this, but there was a point where Katie sent me a text that she's like, I kind of feel like I gotta go take a bath now. And I was like, I guess it was some chapter that was getting really sexual. And she was like, I need to go shower.
It's so funny.
I thought that was awesome. Yeah. Janet, was there something that surprised you that you didn't share in the last episode with Elisabeth?
Nothing really surprised me. I think it's because of my background with her and knowing her and knowing this character baby, having seen it grow, so I wasn't really surprised. I was refreshed and I was joyful. I was like, yes. Yes, put this into print. Yes, I am in the center of this capitalist patriarchy, imperialist space. I am in the outskirts of it. I'm on the periphery as well. I'm all in this. I'm experiencing all of these things every day, all day, in all different kinds of ways. I don't feel like I don't have permission to read a book like this. This is like exactly what it needs to be. This is how I felt. What I can say was not surprising, but I was like, oh, okay. My mom called me after our last episode with Elisabeth. My mother is what, 87? She's going to be 88 this year. And she was like, I love her. I love this work. She was like, where can I get the book from? I was like, I'll send it to you, and so it speaks across generations. Even though my mom is 80, about to be 88, she was born in 1938, and we know, just all of how people are supposed to act, people are supposed to be, artists are supposed to do, women are supposed to be, right? And she's just like, this is great because it speaks to experiences that relate to racism that my mother has experienced. It speaks to misogyny, misogynoir. It speaks to all of that. And it felt good to be able to share this with my mother and for her to see the value in it and how significant it is when it comes to writing and specifically poetry. My mom writes poetry and she writes a lot of poetry about the white men in the blue suits. She has a poem called that. And we're from DC. She was raised in DC. And so you're right there in the heart of, this federal government of the USA. So it was just nice. That was nice. But I was not surprised by anything. I definitely related to a lot. That's the one thing. And it just, I felt joyful just to see that Elisabeth was able to get this out there in the way that she wanted it out there.
I love that title, The White Men in the Blue Suits. Can we get a copy of that and share that maybe on a special episode or something? Because
She will be very happy to read it.
Yeah.
So
Maybe your mom should be on a study group.
So,
we got to get her on the Zoom first,
Technology.
figuring out the Zoom and getting on the Zoom. That's the
Yeah.
first thing.
Usually when we're at the beginning of the episode, when I see Janet doing this, it's her trying to help her mom get onto our episode to catch it live. So yeah. Well, Janet,
How
do you
about
want
you, Danny? How about
Oh,
you? No, I want, yeah.
sorry, me. What surprised me? Oh, a lot of things surprised me. A lot of things. I'm trying to think of something specific because there was so much. But definitely that first page when that was probably the most surprised I felt because I didn't really know what to expect and what I was going into, especially the title Standard American English. And then the first page, I felt this like this nervousness and anxiety about are we going to be getting into like sexual abuse? Are we going to be getting into child abuse? I was like not quite sure what we were about to get into. And I was like, I thought this was going to be about English. Like, and then I was like, everything's about English in this book, and everything's about language, and everything's about how we use language. But again, all the isms, like you mentioned. But I would say probably that very first book of, or sorry, the very first page, first poem about just, you know, get ready to get uncomfortable. That's what's going to happen. And but that's so interesting though, because I did feel a lot of joy too, but definitely some discomfort for sure. Yeah. So
I think
Janet, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it felt like I don't know, like when picking up from where I did, I kind of felt like baby at times, like reading like,
Right.
doesn't everybody know this is God and but the world is so big, he's so small. Baby's just a baby. Like that little part got me. I was like, I feel like baby most of the time. So I guess I like I don't know, I didn't experience as much of like the discomfort or the take back, but I did enjoy it very much.
And that was one of the things I said in our episode with Elizabeth is when we were talking about who is baby, I said the way I interpret it was like I am baby. We
Yeah,
all
your
are
baby.
baby. Yeah, in different ways and different means.
I'm curious about the footnotes because it all happens in the footnotes. There's one thing about the aesthetics, and I think Katie brought up the spacing and how words are written, the agency to change how words are written to emphasize different points. And when you're reading aloud, it's this somatic experience because you are taking those breaths. You are reading the elongated words, if that's a correct way to describe it. And you are sometimes reading language that is reverse, like and or how it's visual, very visual, right? So you have all of these elements, the balance, the spacing, the emphasis, the patterns, but the footnotes. I want to hear your thoughts on the footnotes. Toby, I've seen you shaking your head in agreement
He's got the
throughout
book open.
this
He's
first
looking
part,
for an
right?
example.
So I'm curious, is there a footnote that you checked off in particular that is like the one that you go back to? Because, we've talked about reading the work multiple times. Is there one that you go back to often that you share for this healing, this therapy?
Yeah, there is one that I go back to. It is actually an advert. That's the title of the piece.
Let's get
Um,
that page.
yeah, let's go there. Actually, no, it's White Castle Powder Puffs.
Oh, yes.
Um, and it's on page 10 and 11. And I go to White Castle Powder Puffs when specifically I'm talking to students who are in workshops where they feel completely unseen and like misunderstood. And
Mm,
I start by reading the poem without the footnotes.
mm-hmm.
And this actually happened recently where I read the full poem without footnotes to a writer, and they were laughing and they were like, wow, they like got to the end of it when I was listing out the order Jenny, Lila, Davida, Tabitha, or sometimes Jenny, Davida, Lila, Lila, Davida, Tabitha. And they were just giggling. They're like, yes, because that's what it was like to just have these friendships where some days you would have them on and sometimes you would have off. They didn't need more context, is the point. That they enjoyed the full story and they said, wow, that felt really good. And I said, well, that's not the full story. And they were like, what do you mean that's not the full story? And I was like, do you want to know about Jenny, Davida, Lila, and Tabitha? And it's this, and it connected to this larger point or in this larger political. So I see the footnotes as a political stance from the author. We go into workshops and people are always like, we wanted to know more about Jenny, Davida, Lila, and Tabitha. And I see these footnotes in this specific poem as Elizabeth saying, addressing what Zadie Smith calls an authenticity fetish, where readers have been their diet has been curated to demand more blood, to demand more context, to demand more authenticity, to demand so much from the writer, to just pulp them out. And these footnotes serve as Elizabeth being like, you want to know about these little girls? Let me tell you about these little girls. And to satisfy your fetish, how good does it feel to read about this abuse? And do you feel satisfied after demanding all of this from me? And the reader has to sit there because I read the footnotes to the person who loved the story without them. And after they heard the footnotes, they were like, wow, I feel disgusting. And I'm like, that's what it feels like to be a writer and to have these constant demands out of you for context and authenticity. And so yeah, that's one case scenario where I read it and it's super impactful.
Mm,
I
mm.
love this authenticity fetish. That is going to be my takeaway from today. I've never heard that term before, that phrase. That's awesome.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm,
Katie,
mm.
was there something that's, and I know Katie and Karlee are sharing a book and y'all are in the same house but in different rooms. So I'm not expecting both of y'all to pull out a quote or anything. But was there like something that Katie that stood out to you in the footnotes?
So it was actually the same footnotes Toby was just referencing, where I read the poem the first time and I stopped at the footnote and then I'd read the entire footnote and I'd go back to reading the word of the poem. And then I kind of did just the poem straight through and then the footnotes. And it read differently both times, and I thought that was interesting. But my interpretation initially of the footnotes is like whatever has been swept under the rug, like the context, but the context you can't see. And that might be like a Southern euphemism or something that might not translate well across all cultures, but it's like the saying the quiet part out loud or, showing the ugly things that you're trying so hard to hide. And that's kind of how I interpreted most of the footnotes throughout the book, especially when she's talking about, I believe it's her therapist at some points, you know, um, and kind of like divulging these secrets, if you will, or these little like insights that feel almost voyeuristic, kind of in a way.
Yeah, totally. There were times where I was also a little like, who's narrating right now or who's speaking right now? But then I kind of was like, to be honest, I'm being very honest right now, is my first journey through it, I was trying not to overthink it too much. And I was like, I just want to take it in and because it felt like the pacing of it felt really good to me. The movement of it felt really good to me. And I was trying to turn off my English teacher brain. It's like, what does this mean? And how does this interpret and analyze? And it's like, no, I just want to like feel it and move through it and think more about, and maybe this is very postmodern of me, but thinking more just about like the feelings in my body afterwards and not so much the intellect of like this is who is narrating at this point and then it shifts to this perspective, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But going back and looking at some of the poems again, it was interesting to me. I was thinking of it almost like an actor where you where there are the breaks, where there are pauses, where the changes and the shifts, where I was like, I think this is where it's shifting, and but I wasn't sure, and a part of me felt this pressure of like, I need to know because I'm going to be interviewing her, so I need to know who's speaking to me at every point. But that again, it's like no, it's like we can all have our different interpretations, but I definitely was like many times thinking therapist as well and thinking also teacher at some point. So like, is this a therapist or is this a teacher maybe speaking? But yeah, I feel you on that one. And then Curly, what about you for footnotes?
Honestly, I because Katie and I were sharing the book and like she would read a lot of it out loud, it honestly kind of helped and I didn't really see how it was written until I think like pretty late last night when I looked at the book and I was like, "Oh, this is why you were reading it weird." Like, I'm not even kidding. I'm not even kidding. I listened to
Yeah.
it and I was loving it and I was like taking it all in. So I very much got that same feeling you did of like I'm trying not to think about it too hard. I'm trying to feel it, take it in and understand it that way. More as like a human than like a teacher as an analyst of some sort. But anyways, when I saw how it was like written out and like how the language was used, and then the fact that there were footnotes, that alone was intriguing to me because, like Katie said, it was like, and like I said earlier, we tend to think of art and literature and all these things as like just pretty, only saying the good things or the things that need to be heard, and the rest can just go away or just be swept under the rug. The footnote is the direct combat to that, being like, nope, you want to hear the good, you're going to hear the bad and the ugly too. Here you go. You want to know all this stuff? Like, here you go. And it puts it all out there. And I thought that that was really interesting. But there wasn't, I can't like, I don't have the book in front of me at the moment, but there were like very specific poems into footnotes that had I known we were separating in that sense, like, I don't know. I think it's an interesting aspect. You don't see that in a lot of books unless it's like teaching you something. And this is teaching you
Right.
something, but it's teaching you
Right.
how these words, it's kind of like a not what you say, how you say it kind of thing. And I really like
Right.
that. I like that she
Right.
uses this intense language and none of it sugarcoated. I don't know. I thought it was a great read and the footnotes were a cool aspect. So
Right. Right. Very real language, language that is in our language that
yeah,
we
like
need to
how we
use, right,
communicate.
to
Yeah.
describe what's going on. If only we utilize the words that we have to describe what's going on. I think about how often we could get ourselves out of situations that might hurt ourselves because we're trying to sugarcoat. We're trying to find the ways of getting into a conversation that that doesn't hurt someone, for example, or you don't want to cause harm. And no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to cause harm. I don't want to hurt someone, but I'd rather be direct and blunt and let them know how I'm feeling as opposed to trying to turn my insides out, trying to figure out what would appease this person to understand what I am looking to get across, if that makes sense, and so it is, just a refreshing, um it's refreshing moments when reading through the book. And I definitely have to go back and read the poems over and over again. I'm still reading the work, I should say, the work, because I see it as, multi interdisciplinary. Yes, Toby. Yes. Oh, on
Yeah,
mute.
I guess I completely agree. And I think also with the footnotes, it's an interesting narrative tool that makes this book it's winking at the reader in so many different ways of we get the full story with the poem, but it's also playing with a theme of the novel, which is the idea of narrative and how it's artifice and what do we really remember? What do we really see? But there's so many poems that can feel maybe like they're indicting people, and then the footnotes are a way for Baby to address those critics. And for instance, I'm looking at Baby Eats Dog Food on 13, and the first footnote about yes, psychiatry is real, and it's this comedic humor, but in that same breath, it says yes, the author would come to take pills too because she came up with the idea of Baby who needed to eat dog food, and so that meta reality of here's this morbid poem, but also it's not just a morbid poem in and of itself. It's taking a toll on the author to even have to convey all of these memories and these scenes to you, where it's not even about being method or being a method actor, but it's about the idea of language and where it comes from and how it's inherently, it can be inherently damaging to even fit a disturbing memory into prose. And then there was another footnote. It would be just the same with the author. They seem to live parallel lives, suffer parallel neuroses, and psychiatry. And psychiatry would be another plot line in this story of Baby. And that can feel depressing, but it's also getting at this existential crisis of the human experience of autofiction. Is it autofiction? Is it real fiction? Is this real life? Um, and so, yeah, I just think the footnotes are a great way to be self-referential, but also defend what readers could come into reading and be like, oh, she's just a she hates white feminists, or she's this or she's that. It's so easy to label based if you just read the poem, but the footnotes give greater context to the history behind these views and opinions.
Yeah. How would that feel if you just read all the footnotes, right?
Right,
Aloud
yeah.
in a classroom? What would that look like? You were about to say something, Danny. Sorry.
No, I was just going to echo that of like, I think the footnotes complicate it. You know what I mean? It could be
Hmm.
simpler, but the footnotes complicate it. And for me, and maybe it's because I kind of like really connected with the soap opera theme throughout the book, but I kind of saw the footnotes originally as being like subplots, of like, okay, we're going to go on this little subplot here and we're going to come back. But also, that's like a more academic way of thinking, but too, of like the footnote is like, oh, here's just a little extra bit of information to, I want to make sure I'm still smart and I know this stuff, even though we're not going to get into that. You know what I mean? So, um, but yeah, the footnotes complicate the story for sure. And that was one of the things I mentioned in the last episode is right when I thought I was starting to get to know Baby, I was like, okay, Baby's this superficial kind of character. And then I was like, oh, nope, don't know Baby at all. Like, and again, it's like now she's much more interesting and much more real to me. So that's what I
Right,
really enjoyed about the footnotes. There was something you had
right,
said though, and I
right.
was gonna say something. Now I can't remember it. It might come back to me.
It'll
Those were
come
some
back.
really good examples. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. When you're talking about like, the therapist, the psychiatry part, eating dog food, all of that. Uh, I felt like, oh, now I'm losing my thought again, but let me come back to it. I'll come back to
Okay,
it. Go ahead,
okay.
Jana.
And what I think what we're doing right now really is going into the study guide.
Yeah,
And the questions that come up in the study guide, Danny, you wrote an email to Baby,
I
right?
did.
Let's start off with that because this study guide is what accompanies the book. And so you can utilize this study guide, let's say in a classroom, or let's just say at home with your loved one reading the book,
Hmm.
or just on your own, right? To dig further into standard American English. So, Danny, you went with this prompt under lesson planning, writing, multimedia, and creative exercises that says, write an email to Baby, who is baby.123@gmail.com. Use
Hmm.
context from the book to think about what you would want to ask or tell or share. Think about the kind of reply you may be looking for, advice or comfort, etc. Shape your email to the kind of response you are hoping for. So, Danny, can you tell us about that experience? What did you write in your email and what did you receive?
I did. Okay, so a little extra context. I actually also did one of the other parts of the study guide, which was there was a couple different essays and pieces that you could read in combination with the book. And I read The Uses of Anger by Audre Lorde, which I read a long time ago, and it was really awesome to revisit that piece because it's something, again, I've mentioned this in so many different podcast episodes. One day, maybe I'll get a doctorate, maybe I won't, but I would like to write a book about the use of anger in activism. Something that's very interesting to me, especially because we talk a lot on the show about burnout with artists, and I think anger is a big factor in it. So that just to give that little bit of context, that's kind of where my brain was at when I wrote this email to her, and I see in the chat that Tobi also wrote an email, so I will keep mine quick so we can hear what Tobi wrote also. But basically, I asked Baby. First of all, when I prefaced the email, I asked her, "What year are you in?" Because I was curious maybe when I get a response, I'm not sure. Are we going to be in the 80s? Are we going to be in the 90s? Where are we going to be? And I wrote, are you happy? Have you ever been happy? Does pleasure equal happiness? Does fame equal happiness? Does the process of making art, whether ever intended to be seen or unseen, equal happiness? Maybe joy. What's the difference? Did you feel closer to happy joy feels with people or by yourself? Do you think your art and writing changed will arrow change anyone or society? Does that bring you happy joy feels? I'm asking these questions because I'm thinking a lot about angry people right now. And Baby responded, Baby says, What year is baby in? Delirious, mysterious, time space crushed like a tin can, dot, dot, dot. Baby says happy. Baby is happy when baby says so. Baby says pleasure equals happiness? Maybe. Baby says fame equals happiness? No. Baby says process of making art equals joy? Maybe. Baby says joy is joy and then it disappears. Baby says closer to happy joy feels with people. Baby says art changes people who let it. Baby says that idea brings baby happy joy feels. And then baby says angry people are interesting. So that was my response. And I loved that last part. Angry people are interesting. Toby, what was your email experience like?
Oh my God, that was so good. I'm like, that was a
Yes.
poem. That was like a whole poem that I could like
Yeah.
that I
Right,
could.
right.
That was so good. Mine was nothing like I okay, so I run a indie magazine, like very indie, very, very startup. It's called Big Little Magazine. And I was interested. I didn't even know how it would work. I didn't know if it was possible, but I just reached out to Baby and I was like, "Hi, let me try to find the direct uh email. Let's see. Sorry, give me one second.
I wish
Okay.
I could remember while he's doing that what I was going to say earlier about the psychiatry thing. I can't remember though. It's going to come to me after this podcast episode.
Mm.
Which,
Oh,
for those of you who are listening, please make sure you check out our show notes below where we're going to have links to all sorts of awesome things, including this study guide. And please
mhm.
leave your comments too on things that you find in the book.
Okay, I think I found it. I said, um, we were at AWP and baby, Eli played this performance art video. Well, Eli kind of inhabited baby for a split second at AWP. Everyone was very lucky to see that happen, and it was for like a minute or two, and it was great. Um, and so I said, still on a high, I've got to clean my fucking room. Thank you for letting me be a part of your display. I know you were crunched for time, but still a glorious panel. I've told everyone I know about you. You're sort of spreading like wildfire. I hope that's okay. You're so New York, I can't believe you're not here. You can't help but to spread the gospel, the good news, such good news. People were stunned. They're still buzzing. And Gabrielle Civil, my oh my. What the fuck is going on? This is the future. You are all the future. I hope you know that. Well, I'm sure you know. Have you seen Begonia by Yorgos Lanthimos? Nonetheless, tell me about this hiatus you've been on. We haven't heard from you in quite some time since SAE in 2022. What's baby been up to? Do you mind if I turn my tape recorder on? And baby says, LOL, all caps, dot, 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 dot. Baby says, can you turn recorder off? All caps. Baby says, question mark times 100. Baby says, all caps. Baby says, thank you very much. Baby says, no logo. Baby says, click here. And it was a link to No Logo by Naomi Klein, which I started, which is a phenomenal, just phenomenal piece. Baby says, aim straight at brand bullies. Baby says, knock them out. Baby says, thank you very much. Then I started reading No Logo. Then I reached out to Baby again. But now me and Baby's conversations, I think, are a little too more intimate. And I think that that's how I want to keep them.
Okay. I love
Oh,
the back
okay.
and forth, and here we are. It's
And here
it's
we are.
evolving, the
And
relationship. I
exactly.
love it. Oh my gosh.
But such
Karlee,
fun stuff.
go ahead. Go
Like
ahead, Toby.
I've never seen anything like this. It's great.
It's amazing.
I
It's
love that.
amazing.
I love that.
Yeah. And if you haven't done it, Curly or Katie, you totally can. I think
I'm
the
about
email is
to.
also in the book. I'm pretty sure it's at the end of the book, right?
Yeah, I will
Right.
definitely be doing this.
Yeah,
I
Right.
love
It's on
this.
the back of the book as well,
right.
the contact info. I am curious, Karlee, or Katie, did you all take a prompt from the study guide and act
I
on it?
hadn't yet. I hadn't, but
Okay,
that's
okay,
gonna be the one. I'm like
that's the
eager to
one. Send
write
it
this
that
email
email.
now. Like when we're done with this, I'm sitting down and writing an email.
Yeah.
Right. How
Um,
about you, Katie?
I haven't done any actionable things. I just finished the book yesterday, so it's
yeah.
all
Okay.
yeah, it's all
Okay.
pretty new. But I kind of thought it was going to be one of those things where you send a note kind of into the ether and wouldn't get a response. So it's interesting that you guys are getting responses back.
That's what I'm saying. I like the response part. That's
Yeah.
what is intriguing to me.
Yeah, and it was like
Yeah, this
immediate too. Yeah.
right. And the back and forth, Toby, I love that. I love that you it's a conversation now, which like you said, it's becoming really it sounds like it's becoming a piece within itself. You were talking about Danny's response and that being a poem,
Mhm.
but what you are doing with baby, that becoming a piece within itself. I love this. It's adding to the footnotes, is adding to that complexity and delving deeper into these little spaces that we may not explore. We're not going to get until we look through our lens and we send that email to baby through our lens of the work.
Yeah, and that's why the first thing I knew, I didn't even, before I even got a response, I was like, can I turn the recorder on? Because I just knew whatever was going to happen was going to be something worth the magazine making an article about drafting, or because I just knew.
Mhm.
And she's
Mm.
like, no, recorder off. I'm like, I'm gonna ask
Meh.
baby again in the future. Hey baby, I'm really interested in interviewing you for Big Little Magazine. What do you think about that? And I really want to know what baby will say, but that's my
Mm.
future goal.
I love that.
Mhm.
I think I'm finding so interesting about all of this, not to like take away from any like question or any like prompt to keep things rolling, but I think what I'm finding so interesting about all of this is like we're talking about language, right? We're talking about like the importance of language and how it's used and all these things. And we're being shown through this book like how to not hold back in a sense. And I think that's so beautiful because I feel like what it's really teaching us is communication at its finest. And like whether you have this like image of baby in your head or the writer in your head that is one type of
Mhm.
way, or oh, she's just this type of person and you write it off as whatever, either way you're still talking about it. Either way, this
Mhm.
book is promoting conversation and it is promoting us to use language that
Mhm.
means something, whether we know it or not, whether you're an art, whether you're a self-proclaimed artist or not. It's still it's beautiful. It's promoting this conversation and I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it. I'm so thankful to be part of this.
You triggered the thing I was going to say earlier that I forgot. But
What?
that's what I was thinking about when Elisabeth and I and Janet and I, when we had our first just get together just to talk before we did any recording or anything. It was like a week or so before our episode release. And she had mentioned, and I'll be honest, it kind of was like, oh, interesting. But she had mentioned, she was like, this book is not autobiographical, and some people think it is. And I was like, well, because there were a couple of moments where I thought, are we speaking maybe from her real experiences? Which, of course, as a writer, as an artist, we're always pulling from real experiences that we've lived, right? And we're meeting other people and learning their experiences and their perspectives, right? But it made there were a couple points like with the dog food, but that was the example where I was like, is this like is Elisabeth taking pills? Like what's happening here? And it was because of these moments that feel meta and like who's speaking right now? Is it actually real Elisabeth? I don't know because this is the person I'm about to interview, but it's the kind of linking it back to what you're talking about with communication of just how we communicate with other people. What is baby clearly communicating to other people? For example, what was the one poem where she's trying to get the job, right? And there's all these footnotes of like what's really going on in her head versus what is actually being said in the space while she's trying to get this job, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
so it's like, what are we communicating out loud? What are we communicating to ourselves? What are we communicating to our therapist or maybe our
How are we communicating with each other? You know what I mean? That's
exactly.
the thing. The
Yeah.
whole book just promotes it. It
Yeah.
promotes the conversation to continue forward.
Right. And who's baby and who's Elisabeth? I see Toby. He's got the page. Do you want to share?
Oh, I just, when you brought that up, it made me think about that scene of like those continuous scenes. And it made me think about how the beginning of when you were talking about your experience of reading that first page and thinking like, wow, like we're really getting into it. And I thought that another wonderful theme of the book and how it directly refutes the white neurotypical mindset of a narrative and how a narrative should look is that it's trying to make this statement how girlhood is stolen so early as a black girl, but also in that same breath, how you're when it's stolen, you're still expected to act like a girl, but also that like your whole trajectory is moved forward because you've experienced something that is so traumatic. And so I think that that idea as well, like the footnotes saying that narrative and time and coming of age looks different for everyone. And it's not as easy as saying, oh, when I was 7 years old, this happened to me, because within that same breath, there's also so much negativity, but also like, I don't know. I just thought that the footnotes work in a great way to like disrupt our perception of how a narrative momentum should go. And like, if we think that, oh, A plus B equals C, the book is really trying to show you that that is not the equation here.
That is
Yeah.
not it. I'm so happy you brought that up. The sexualization of little black girls. As a little black girl, because I'm still a little black girl inside, I remember being in ballet class and wanting to just do the moves like the ballerinas do. And the teacher, the instructor told me in so many words, I can't remember the verbatim, your butt is too big. To a little girl. To a little
Yeah.
girl. I was like, I don't know, 7 to a little girl. And meanwhile, I'm just like standing there like, okay, what do I do now? Because this woman, and I wasn't thinking it at that time, but as I've grown and thought about it, this woman is looking at me in a different way. Like she's sexualizing my body. She's also uh looking at it through the lens of racism, looking at it through the lens of what's standard beauty, looking at it through the lens of whatever she's experienced in her life, and she's displacing it onto me. So no, it was not joyful. However, yes, I'm still a little girl. I still want to have fun. I still want to do this ballet. So now what do I do with that? Do I just go home and not ever try to be a ballerina again? And then I don't see ballerinas who look like me. So maybe she's right. Maybe my butt is too big.
Yeah.
Right. So again, just being at that center and also being on the periphery, being the other. And that's why I said nothing shocking to me in this. This was joyful. Just being able to express it in that way. And bring light to these issues and then be able to have these conversations about those types of experiences. It or is just it's just refreshing, like I said before, just being able to go back into it and think about that. So I appreciate, Tobi, that you are bringing that into the conversation as well, because it's obviously absolutely part of it. um
Yeah.
Gosh, we it's almost that time.
Yeah.
But I want us I want us to just, that study guide, I think is just very important to continue on.
Mhm.
And I wanted to know if Danny or anyone, if there is one of these questions or prompts in the study guide, and what I want to actually share it just with everybody. I mean, you can go to the website and get it, but let me just put it in the chat real quick for us just to have. I was just wondering, is there a prompt that you're interested in doing, or besides, Tobi, the email, that you've explored? I'm wondering.
Mhm.
Interested or explored. And so let's see.
And I know that Katie, I want to make sure we share the mic and that you have, if you had also thoughts and reflections. I know it's funny. I teach Katie drum lessons also. She's going to be an amazing drummer one day. She actually already is amazing, but by amazing, I mean she's going to be performing one day. I will make her. Right now, she's like, I just want to do this for fun. But um, I think it's such a good typical drummer thing sometimes is we like to be behind the band. We like to be a part of it, but we don't want to like, don't give us the microphone. So I want to make sure we are sharing the microphone with you. And if you have any thoughts or things you want to share.
I appreciate that. No, go ahead, please.
She's like, no,
But
go ahead,
you know,
please.
the drummer is in the background, but the drummer's leading. The drummer is
Oh,
moving the whole thing,
appreciate you
right?
saying that. We are totally
The
the
drummer,
conductor. We
I'm
decide
just
when it
saying,
ends. We decide when we change.
keep the funky drummer drumming. You know what I'm saying? We're talking about drums, okay?
100%.
So I just shared in the chat, again, just so we can have it right here, the study guide. And I saw Toby looking, Karlee, I know you're looking,
Mhm.
and Danny, if there is a prompt that you're interested in exploring.
Mine is coming up now. Let's see.
Okay. And so, Toby, looks like,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was an explicit prompt, but it was a question about author bios. And I guess
mm,
inherently in my own practice, looking at Elizabeth's author bio has made me rethink what I think an author bio is, and also looking at Elizabeth's website has made me rethink my website and for Big Little and what we're doing and how we want to come across in the digital age. So I've been thinking a lot about bios because Elizabeth's bio is so interesting because it's so specific in a really sort of like schizophrenic and meta way, which I love, but it's also so it's like super specific and in that same breath so opaque. I had one of my friends read the bio and they're like, "Oh, ha ha ha, funny." And then I was like, "No, read this bio line by line. And what is this person saying?" And they're like, "Okay, wait, now I actually have to read it." And they're like, "Oh my God, they're talking about the publishing industry and they're talking about workshop and they're talking about the artist way and they're talking about this." And I'm like, it's all concealed in this conceit of the romance novel about Miss Daniel Steele. And so I've just been thinking about ways to just queer my thinking, queer up the way that you are conditioned to come to these platforms and mess everything up. But yeah,
right, mess everything up.
yeah,
I love that.
yeah.
Karlee, it looks like you had something to share.
I think
Excitement.
I think the prompt, well, first of all, queer everything up got me, but
Mhm.
second of all, I read through some of the other prompts, and I think one that would be interesting because I'm a songwriter and I write a lot of original music. Something that would be interesting would to be writing a poem, like I guess as well, like it said, like to write your own poem and then add footnotes that are essential to the narrative. And like I would like to mess around with that. I think that'd be an interesting way to attack writing for once. I think that's a whole different, take on it. And I would love to try that myself and see, how that affects what I'm trying to say. You know what I mean? Like if I have something in my mind that I want to say, but I don't want it to sound too harsh or too this or too that, I think it's interesting to throw that footnote in there because then there's no escaping it. Kind of like in the book where she tries to keep some of these things very well said or said a certain way, and then the footnote comes in and it's just like, nope. So I would like to try that myself.
It's funny you mentioned bios before too, because when I was nagging
I
Katie
suck
and
at them.
Karlee, when I was nagging Katie and Karlee for bios, both of them, I think Katie literally wrote, I'm a feminist, question mark. I don't know. And I was like, I will write one for you. And I ended up writing both their bios for
That
this
would have been
episode
great. That
today.
would have been great in the
But
vein of standard
yeah.
American English.
Yeah, so I think like it definitely I and as I was telling Katie too, it's like writing a bio is a craft, but I'm realizing I'm writing a bio to fit the industry standard. That's a certain craft. And then to be able to write authentically as myself, that's like, whoa. I mean,
Yeah.
am I brave enough to do that? And also, why should that be so bold? So Katie, do you want to speak on that experience?
I am notoriously terrible at talking about myself. I mean, I'll talk about anything else. I'm just quite bad at that. So, um, I mean, from a painter's perspective, I suppose I can maybe manage it. A lot of my work has recently become really reflective and autobiographical. There we go. Um, but when it comes to just actual words, no, just I can't do it.
Mhm. And I think
Bios are hard.
yeah, but in this case, it's like, the bio is the piece of art and it speaks for itself, hadn't thought about it in that way before. So, um, I think it's time, y'all, for the unicorn question. Janet, is it time for the unicorn question? She's
Yes.
she's nodding. She's nodding.
Yes. Yes, it is that time. As usual, it's so challenging to get away from this fantastic conversation because we've
Mhm.
only scratched the surface.
Right.
However, right now we have this question, and I'm
This is our
sharing the screen.
closeout question for every episode that we like to ask all of our guests, whether they're RFC comrades, whether they're folks that we're interviewing. We love to show this image of the RFC unicorn that I designed that will one day be on a sparkly t-shirt and ethically made. We'll figure that out later. But as our unicorn is saying here on the screen, in your utopia, there would be dot, dot, dot. Let's actually go backwards this time. Karlee, let's start with you. In your utopia, Karlee,
Like in
there
my
would
own little
be,
like version of the world, like what would
yeah,
I like if I had my own
yeah.
Earth, what would I make? Okay.
However you interpret it, however you interpret it.
Oh Lord. That's such a stump you and stop you right in your tracks kind of question because like I want to part of me like there's the adult side of me, the intellectual side of me that's like, oh, I'd want freedom and peace and all these beautiful things. But then there's the kid inside of me that's like Taco Tuesdays. There would consistently be Taco Tuesdays. Like every single Tuesday would be Taco Tuesday and there would be music every mile. That's just how it would go. Like you would not be able to walk a mile without hearing music, and everywhere you go, there would just be lots of noise. And then Taco Tuesday, duh. So that's like my inner child speaking from in my utopia. That's what there would be.
I love that, Karlee. Thank you so much for that. Katie, in your utopia, there would be.
There would be matriarchy in my utopia.
Amen.
Yeah, that's
Boom.
pretty much yeah. And also some kind of like a really easy fix for hot flashes too. 'Cause I'm dying
Lord,
already.
yes, I
Oh
understand.
no.
My sisters, the expressions of the hot flashes, I understand. In lieu of the hormones that they give you, right? Like,
Hmm.
They're
Hmm.
brutal.
yes.
Awesome. What's the word I want? I'm all about that too. I'm trying to think of the word that I want for that, but yes, absolutely. Toby, in your utopia, there
Yeah.
would be.
I'm also for the hot flashes. I have hyperhidrosis, so I just ordered these Amazon Sage tablets. I know Amazon's awful, but these Sage tablets, I was doing research for so long because my health insurance is a really weird situation right now. But these Sage tablets are supposed to like stop your sweat glands from overproducing. And so many people in the reviews were like, I have hot flashes. These cured my hot flashes after taking for them for only 3 days. And so I'm gonna try them. They come today. So for my hyperhidrosis,
Wow.
so maybe in my utopia I wouldn't have hyperhidrosis either. Um, but
Right.
yeah, just sage tablets, sage. In my utopia, though, I was reading this novel called Hours by Phillip Williams, and it's a 900-page novel that imagines a utopia where slavery didn't exist. And
Mhm.
so it's super magical and it's witchy, but it also shows that this idea of utopia that we have for ourselves um, comes with pitfalls. Like, for instance, if it was Taco Tuesday all the time, then in this hours utopia, it was like, oh, there's taco meat everywhere on the streets, and rats are coming out and they eat all the taco meat now, and there's like an overflow of taco. It's super like that. But I guess in my utopia, I would have no sickness. like I think mortality would still be a thing. I think mortality helps us treasure our memories more, but I think no sickness would be really interesting. I wonder how far we could get.
As someone who's experienced like a lot of death and things in their life, I think that would totally that's a really interesting concept because I think it would totally reimagine how we cope, how we grieve, how we handle these things, these challenges that are inevitable, because mortality, duh, But like you said, I think there is a beauty in that. But I think the no sickness thing would be quite interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. All
I've never
right.
actually
See,
thought
that's what I'm
about it
saying. I
until
want an
then. Yeah.
intellectual answer, but I came up with
Yeah.
Taco Tuesday.
No, but I hadn't even thought about that until the question. I was like, oh, maybe no sickness, but that's interesting because what would that world look like?
Yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
would
Right.
change
Mm-hmm.
everything about
Mm-hmm.
what we know of being human and how that's supposed to end or what it's supposed to look like for us. I think it would just
Mhm.
be
Mm-hmm.
interesting.
Hmm.
I think the word I'm looking for is commend. I commend all of that. No, I approve all of that. No, I don't know what word I'm
Well,
looking
I
for.
approve this message.
I know it sounds like I'm the boss or something. Like I'm like, okay, it's got my stamp on it now. But no, if I had a Danny stamp, I'd be like, yep, I like all this. Stamp, 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 stamp. Yeah. So these are
Well, this is
great. These
all
are great
happening.
answers.
It's all happening, right? The simultaneity, as they say, within the Akashic record. It's all happening. So all of these utopias that we're talking about,
Yeah.
they're happening in parallel somewhere,
yeah.
right? It's just a matter of we're in this particular iteration, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So yeah, this is oh, man, gosh, yeah, I appreciated all of this. All of it.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for being on our show today. This was like I think we might start a book club, and this was a great experiment into like what the RFC future book club might look like. Stay tuned for
I'd be
that.
in it.
It's an idea. It's on our idea list of many ideas.
I'm here with
It's right.
it.
It's part of the retreat.
Yeah.
It's part of the
Yeah.
planning retreat that we got going on. So
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you all so much for coming and sharing your thoughts, your feels, your joys, your reflections, your recalibrations. We really appreciate y'all being here today. And we hope that, you all keep listening to the podcast, keep telling your people to come to the podcast. Tell your people if you know people you think should be on our podcast. Like the amazing Elisabeth Eli is the one who brought us to Tobi, so that was awesome. I'm so glad we hooked up. Yeah, please spread the word. Thank you.
All right.
thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all. So we are at our closing. We are at our closing. Gosh. It's always difficult to close out and to get ourselves out of this wonderful mode that we are in within this hour time frame. Okay, you know what? Look, y'all. My child is asking for a hug, so I have to give a hug.
Hugs are good too.
Yes, hugs are good. He knows that I'm sad that this is being closed out. So, all right. Again, thank you to our RFC comrades, Tobi, Katherine, Karlee. Thank you so much. Our next episode is on Saturday, May 9th. It's already going to be May. What is happening? It's May 9th, 1 p.m. ET. So stay tuned for the theme of our next collection. And we also like to remind our listeners that this podcast is funded by the two of us and your donations. Please help us keep our podcast going by making a donation through our PayPal link in the show notes below. And remember to subscribe right now. Subscribe right now. Share this and like this. Okay. And with that, see you May 9th. Peace.
Peace.